food's more of a necessity, and yet they'll give you jail time and a criminal record if you steal food. If you steal rent, you actually don't get a criminal record. There's no criminal charge. It's the only theft that's legal in Ontario, and that's messed up.
They're okay shutting off your water. Like, they can turn your water off, but as a landlord, we can't kick someone out who isn't paying rent.
And I think a lot of us are just sort of stuck in this like media herd mentality where like whatever the government says, we just agree with it. And we give them the power to do whatever they want because of this pandemic, right? And that's a scary, scary thing.
Landlords, at least based upon the vast majority of landlords I know, they're not asking for bailouts. They're just asking for cooperation during these trying times. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing rent strikers, just kind of the entire rent strike movement. There's a lot of discussion, I guess, near the end of March in regards to April 1st rent, and my buddy Mike Rosehart had a post go viral on Facebook where he compared, in essence, rent striking to stealing at the grocery store, and really, what is the difference? And if we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're kind of on the same level. But anyways, let's dive in and discuss it in today's video. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and I've got Mike Rosehart on today's video. And in today's video, we're going to dive into a Facebook post that Mike recently made that got a lot of attention, got a lot of traction, and definitely fueled a lot of hate. And, this post and the reaction this post got, to me, is really just the tip of the iceberg in regards to really the divide we're seeing occur right now in society between tenants and landlords. And I personally think it's really unfortunate because I think most people are good people and just want to work and get along with each other. But I think mainstream media and some politicians are really positioning us to be at loggerheads, to really become enemies, to get really combative and just not work together during these trying times. And nothing better highlights this, in my opinion, than the reaction you got on this post, Mike.
Yeah, definitely. You want me to read the post for people?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull it up here right now. And if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of context first. Like, when you originally posted this, what did you think was going to happen? And then let's go through the actual post.
Yeah, so I took a clickbaity picture of like a grocery store. At the time, I had been having a few, I've been seeing a few posts online from these, I guess you call them like pro-tenant groups. That was like, on April 1st, don't pay your rent. On April 1st, like withhold your rent. Even if you can pay your rent, don't pay it. Like screw the capitalist agenda. And I saw like a lot of these posts. And then I was seeing these tenant groups. There was like thousands of people. And I'm like, just as a landlord, kind of just going in to see what's up. And obviously, this is my business. I got to see what's going on. These are my customers. And to see like a few of my own tenants actually in these groups, I was like, okay, this is a bit concerning. Like these were tenants I inherited. They weren't tenants that I placed. But I remember just seeing this post and I'm like going through my Facebook feed for a couple of days. At first, I'm like, oh, well, I see a few of these popping up. And then I was seeing them like all the time on Facebook, especially. And I was like, geez, there's not one, comment about this at all as far as like any landlord defense other than like one other group that I had saw. And I thought, geez, I got to do a post about this. Like, let's be clear here. Advocating for theft is the same as advocating, like to steal housing is the same to steal, food from your grocery store. In fact, I'd argue food's more of a necessity, and yet they'll give you jail time and a criminal record if you steal food. If you steal rent, you actually don't get a criminal record. There's no criminal charge. It's the only theft that's legal in Ontario, and that's messed up, first off. So I thought,
it really is.
Like, someone's got to do something about this. So I just made a post about it, and it actually started as an Instagram post, and then I got a lot of direct messages, and then I think I took it down on Instagram and then put it up on YouTube and got a lot of comments on YouTube into the community page too on my YouTube channel. And then I went on to Facebook and posted it here, and it got a good amount of traffic at first. And then I think people started sharing it into like pro tenant groups, and I was getting like a comment every couple seconds. Like my phone was just dying with the number of comments. And I was just deleting a lot of the really, really like, I guess you call them like the death threat ones, the ones that were like, go die, we're going to find out where you live, you capitalist pig, like, oh, you landlord, we're going to take your building. Just some like nonsensical, like,
and I know people have an emotional reaction to the subject matter, but in my opinion, the argument you were making was very relevant, right? It's really strange that it really is only housing that's the protected asset. Everything else, if you break the rules, if you do wrong, you will be punished for it. So, for example, if you stop paying your water bill, and this is a utility that's controlled by the government, they're okay shutting off your water. Like, they can turn your water off. But as a landlord, we can't kick someone out who isn't paying rent. And this is a very strange concept to me. And you're 100% right on stealing food, right? There's no one that would ever, I think, there's very few people in general in society that would make an argument that a poor person should be allowed to just walk into Walmart and fill up their backpack and walk out and not have any sort of repercussions to that. And not only that, but take a step further. If we're talking about Ontario, you can't even now create a list of people that stole from you. Like, that's against the law to share that list as a landlord. So if someone didn't pay you rent, we can't keep a list and share it amongst landlords to let other landlords know about bad actors or bad tenants. But there's certainly nothing wrong with shoplifters being identified and barred from the premises of a Walmart. If you shoplift there once, they can literally just get a restraining order. They can tell their security. Their security can now start profiling you. Like, we have no issues with this in general society. So I think, well, actually, let's dive into your post first. So do you mind reading it off, or would you like me to?
Yeah, sure, I can read it. There was one edit, like the bottom part, let me be clear. I kind of added that in after it started to go viral, after 1,000 or 1,500 comments. I put that in there so that people could like see that I wasn't, evil or anything. So not paying rent for your housing is the same as stealing food from your grocery store. Theft is theft. Advising tenants at this time to not pay rent is as irresponsible as people going to steal food from the grocery store. Come on, Dougie. And that was related to actually a post that I saw around that time where Doug Ford kind of mentioned, he's our premier in Ontario here. He sort of mentioned that, like, hey, if you need to pay for food and things like that, it's okay to not to pay rent. Like, we've put in place something that protects you so you can't be evicted. Effectively is what the post is about. And I'm not doing a perfect summarization, obviously. And I think he went back later and recanted part of his statement publicly and was like, hey, if you have the ability to pay part of your rent, pay that. If you can pay rent anyway with the now benefits that are coming out here in Ontario and in Canada, please pay your rent, et cetera, and so forth. But initially, like, the first reaction before any stimulus was really available, that was sort of what he said. And I think that landlords aren't going to forget that. I happen to have actually voted for him, but it's crazy that he would go out there and say something like that. I think that it's not really fair game to attack landlords in that way. In fact, he didn't go after utility companies. He didn't go after, grocery store owners, which are all business owners that sell basic, necessity type services. He went after the small landlord, right? And I don't think that's quite fair, because there is no recourse right now until COVID-19's, shutdown ends. There is no landlord tenant board. So there was no recourse for us at all. Like, you call the police, they go to the landlord tenant board. There's nothing we can do. So there's no one there to protect this stealing, right? Landlords are required to provide the credit to the tenant. So anyway, I'll keep going. Where's the subsidy to cover tenants' rent directly to the landlord was something I sort of proposed. I threw in there. There was a $2,000 a month benefit being provided for a lot of tenants. I know a lot of tenants that were getting it, and in those tenant groups saying, hey, just gave my $2,000 stimulus, I'm going to go buy an iPhone, no rent April 1. That was like the hashtag. And I'm like, really? These people are actually going to buy like a brand new iPhone, but not going to pay their rent. This is not the intent of the stimulus. Many people are definitely like abusing this. And when they can't pay their rent, they should be evicted because they're making a choice right now to not pay their rent. Right. And so, like, it just gets me angry when people are so financially irresponsible, or just irresponsible in general. Like, when you have the means to pay for your housing now for your family, to go buy an iPhone is like, and then get evicted later is to say, I don't know. It just made me really, really mad. So I'll keep going. I personally am offering my tenants the flexibility during this time, and I recommend all landlords do. And that's something that I was just sharing for my landlord community that follow me. Like, hey, we got to be flexible with our tenants. If they can only pay part of their rent, be easy with them. Maybe don't. The recommendation, I guess, is to serve them with an N4 and start the process now. But let them know, like, hey, you don't want to actually evict them. My good tenants, I don't want them. I have tons of great tenants that I don't want to leave. I want them to catch up on their rent. I have great tenants that make great money that are maybe off right now and actually struggling. And so I'd be happy to extend credit to those. I do think that forced extension of credit is a bit silly, but landlord having the right to offer that, you should, and you should work with your tenants. And offering a discount in terms of like a gift card is a great idea. One thing I will say for those people who are watching, don't give your tenants a discount. It was confirmed now by 3 paralegals. Don't give your tenants a discount for COVID, because if there's a history of that 2 months in a row, the rent is now permanently discounted forever, and they could argue to the landlord tenant board that they have now the right to that rent. So don't discount their rent, have them pay the full lawful rent, and then give them a cash back or a gift card, a Visa, something like that. That's something I recommend during this crisis. I made a second post about that. It got a bunch of haters on it too, got 400 or 500 comments. in that one as well. They were like, only a gift card for part of the rent. Like you landlord scum, you should be giving the free rent. You're stealing housing from everyone else. Like, anyway, there were some crazy arguments we'll get into later. But I'll keep going. But this does not mean a free ride forever. When better economic times come, tenants should expect to catch up when they can. We need to work together to recover from this. Basically, together is what I'm sort of advocating for. And then I say, let me be clear. I think it is the government's role to subsidize the housing and food during this crisis for those who really can't afford, not the private citizens, aka landlords, or grocery stores, or owners of businesses, or farmers who produce food to personally subsidize people in an unfair manner. Effectively, what I'm saying here is that, like, I think it's the government's role to step in for those people who can't afford than to make one person or one private citizen or business unnecessarily carry more of the burden. There's a reason we pay such a high tax rate in Canada. It's because we've agreed as a society that we're okay to, pay 50% of our income in taxes to support the bottom of society. To impose these type of, restrictions on, say, a landlord, you can imagine if tenants didn't pay rent at all, we still have expenses. Our profit margin isn't 100% on rent, right? We don't get all that to our bottom line. Oftentimes, 80 or 90% of our rent is just covering our expenses. So for us to have a business that operated at a loss, that'd be like a negative tax rate of several 100%. That's an unfair thing to shove down a private citizen's throat, I think. So that's part of the anger that I had here in principle, right? Because if we allow, in principle, the idea for landlords to be screwed, why not then step over and say to the farmer, hey, you should just give your food away for free, your crop this year, because of, sir, I don't care that you had operating costs to provide that food, or, hey, Mr. Utility Company, et cetera, and so forth. Hey, Mr. Grocery Store owner, you're only a small variety store owner. You should give all of the food that you have on your shelves to those in your neighborhood that really need it. And you should let them come in and steal it for free. Where does the line kind of end? Where do you draw it in the sand? And I think this was a line that was crossed. And I think we as business owners, even if you're not a landlord, you should stand up for the principle, for the right as Canadians to not let the government pass, I think they crossed a line here, to be honest. To stop evictions, like full stop. They could have done virtual evictions. They could have allowed the process to continue in some way. I think that the current Residential Tenancy Act, if you've taken a read through it, is very tenant favoring already. It already provides too much power to the tenant and not enough power to the landlord, or any recourse really at all for the landlord. And so I think then this was a step too far in a slippery slope. This could end up, somewhere we don't want it to end up.
Yeah, and I think just building upon that, and I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but if you look at the solutions they're providing, or the solutions they're trying to provide right now, it's very just one-sided. Like, it's just like, well, if we just make evictions impossible, that'll solve the tenants' problems. But it's not really thinking through, like, how can we actually solve this for everyone? Why not just pause tenant evictions related to non-payment and allow the government to step in immediately and just cover those rents until we're able to get back to some sense of normalcy, right? Like, should really a tenant that's causing a public disturbance still not be able to be evicted because of COVID-19? Like, there's so many unintended consequences. And while I understand people have an emotional reaction to this subject matter, and they naturally go to the personal story of, like, I don't want to see a single mother on the street, without shelter. I empathize with that perspective, but it's important to understand we don't exist in a vacuum. And so there's not one-off scenarios. There's actually just a giant spectrum of options and scenarios happening at any given moment in time. And while we may want to help out one piece of that spectrum, we don't want to just broadly say tenants essentially own the property that they live in now. Like, we're taking some pretty extreme measures at this point in time, and we're definitely seeing some both personal individuals as well as public figures and government officials proposing some pretty extreme measures. And I think it's really important to understand that during extreme situations, during crises, humans naturally want to overreact because just we just start to panic, right? And our fight or flight mechanism kicks in. And it's like, well, we need to do something. Doing something's better than doing nothing. So I don't care. Like, let's just do the most that we can think of doing. And we've seen this problem happen in the past with 9/11. Where the medicine we took, I would argue, was worse than the actual thing we were trying to cure. We ended up giving up so many civil liberties and privacy rights during that era. And I'm scared that we're about to give up significant economic rights and freedoms during this era and crisis. But Mike, if you don't mind just continuing on.
Yeah, I totally echo everything you're saying there. And I think that there was definitely some lines crossed. And that was part of why I was so upset about this, is that none of us are we're just like to add on to your comment there. And I think a lot of us are just sort of stuck in this like media herd mentality where like whatever the government says, we just agree with it. And we give them the power to do whatever they want because of this pandemic, right? And that's a scary thing because some of these powers that they've now acquired or some of these rights that they've taken away, they're hard to get those back.
Cashflow Tribe.
We're also, I guess, limited by our own belief system. And I think Cashflow Tribe opens you up to a lot more possibilities. And I want other people to just even see it, right? So they can believe it for themselves.
Even if you think that you know everything about real estate, you don't. You know, like meeting new people, like you always hear different stories. And, you know, like having 15, 20, 30 people with different mindsets. They have different experiences, you know, like that's so powerful. And meeting this people, like for me, it's priceless. It's priceless. It doesn't. The 2,500 doesn't even come close.
At least I've had the mindset change over the last couple of months. I know the questions to ask. I know the things to do. I also have a team behind me that if I don't know some answers, I can ask. And they've been so helpful just to answer those questions and make me feel at ease.
It was something that I needed. I found that I already have properties. I was very stagnant. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity.
It's just a mindset, right? It's a mindset change. Our own limited belief, my fears that I had and how to overcome them.
Just want to get rid of my limiting beliefs, network, grow, be around like-minded people. 1 year from now, I feel I will get rid of all those limiting beliefs, start doing more deals, more networking, just completely grow.
And I think a lot of us are just sort of stuck in this like media herd mentality where like whatever the government says, we just agree with it. And we give them the power to do whatever they want because of this pandemic, right? And that's a scary thing because some of these powers that they've now acquired or some of these rights that they've taken away, they're hard to get those back.
Yes.
So that's something we got to kind of be cognizant of and setting bad precedents, like for instance, allowing tenants to not pay rent and things of that nature and allowing theft to happen, right? It's a very slippery slope. If you allow theft of housing, why not allow theft of food for the lady who's struggling? And like, there was a lot of really fair comments in here too, or there was a few fair comments in here about, you know, what about that single mother that's really struggling? And like us landlords have hearts. I have a heart. In those situations, I actually, in some situations, I'm offering huge discounts to those tenants to help them through this time. And like, I'm also a Canadian. And so we're fairly socialist in that we pay a 50% tax rate to ensure there's a basic housing available for all people. There are places like Men's Mission and there's tons of sheltering.
Well, and like, yeah,
exist.
Let's be really honest. It's very rare that someone literally dies on the streets in Canada. Like, it's very rare that someone dies of exposure or they die of starvation. Again, that's not to say that we've got a perfect social safety net, but realistically speaking, it's probably the best it's ever been. And, you know, we're probably among the leading nations when you especially look at the world in its totality. And I think it's really important to have that perspective and context when viewing things through the lens of what's going on today. Again, it's not like people are literally dying in the streets and we're stacking bodies because of this emergency.
I totally agree. And so I went on to further say, not private citizens directly like landlords, grocery store owners, and farmers. I've personally offered all of my tenants interest-free rent deferral payment plans out of my own pocket, and I received personally no mortgage deferrals of any kind from the banks, no property tax deferrals, no utility deferrals. All of my expenses have been continued on, and I am out of my personal pocket during this time providing that, right, for my tenants. And in many cases, I actually offer discounts in the form of gift cards and things like that to help tenants out through this time. And that's something that I think every landlord should work with their tenants during this time. If you can afford to go with no profit for the month, maybe that means a 15% rent discount because that was your profit margin. In some cases, I offer that to tenants that were great. I'm not going to maybe offer that. It's up to me to decide based on merit, based on number of factors. If I have a really great tenant that's been with me for a long time, I'm going to offer that discount, right? Or if I have a tenant that I want to stay on with me for a considerable amount of time, I'm going to offer that. And I think landlords should offer that during this time.
Yeah.
The big thing here being work with your landlord. Both like tenants and landlords need to work together to find a creative solution. And I think that tenants just throwing their backs up and saying, I'm not going to pay any rent at all, like that's not a fair solution because they're consuming probably like 80% of their rent is just them living there, right? The cost of property taxes, utilities, et cetera, and so forth. So not even pay for themselves is pretty unfair. But working together is the big thing. Try not to demand anything from either side is sort of a fair assumption too. Like for tenants to just demand free rent, that's unreasonable at this time. And I think landlords, to just demand rent on the first with no flexibility is also unrealistic. I think that
cooperation is key, for
is
sure.
the key piece here, right? The landlord has bills to pay. Housing isn't free. The right to a basic accommodation isn't the same as the right to live in whatever place you want to live on whoever's dime you'd like. And the point I made here, and I went on in the comments to talk about this, was in some of my properties, I have a really luxury product. And so I'm selling like the Haagen-Dazs ice cream of housing. You can't argue that you could argue you need bread and like maybe meat and a bit of vegetables and water to live. But you can't go in and say, hey, give me the Haagen-Dazs ice cream for free. So some of my luxury rentals, for instance, that are targeting people who want granite countertops, like the most luxurious high-end finishes, you don't have a right to that. And a lot of the tenants, it was crazy. They would rent places that were too big for themselves. And now that there's a bit of a pullback, they were on like barely getting by. Every paycheck went directly to rent. Those people now who have lived too high on the hog, they don't have a right to stay in their 5,000 square foot rented house when they can't afford to pay rent. I think that that's not fair to go to the premier and say, hey, I should be able to live in whatever accommodation I want. Not like a basic accommodation, the accommodation that I want. Like I deserve to drive a Ferrari in this time. I have the right to transportation. That's not fair, I think, to put that on a landlord, especially landlords who offer luxury products. And a lot of my units were actually luxury in nature. And so I put that in there sort of to that point, to those people who offer those luxury products. If you offer the Haagen-Dazs ice cream of housing, people don't have a right to that within, I think, their basic housing right. And so that was sort of a point I added in after I edited this part in and put this paragraph in for those people who were like, and I would creep their profile and see they were living like a great life. And they're arguing they should have like rent free. And I'm like, that you don't have a right to you have a right to basic housing. But you don't have a right to live in like an 8-bedroom, 6-bath house. That isn't your God-given right. You have a right to live in a bachelor apartment or something for yourself. Like there's a line here. And I think that in a lot of situations, like you said, painting like with a broad stroke brush creates a lot of problems. It's great maybe to solve for the single mom who's actually struggling, but not fair for like the 10 people who over-levered and overcommitted during this time. They're living, paycheck to paycheck. And now they actually do need to pare back. Like if you're watching this and you're driving a brand new Mercedes and you have a Lamborghini in the driveway, and you just lost your job and you're living in a huge house, it's probably time to downsize. It's probably time to make conscious decisions and say, hey, I was living too high on the hog. I don't make that money now. I didn't save for a rainy day. It's not fair for me to go after someone else. I need to take accountability. And that's the big thing here is I think people need to take accountability for their actions and like be supportive where we can to help that person recover. But we need to be accountable for the fact that a lot of us didn't save for the future. I saved for the future, but a lot of tenants didn't, right? And so that's one of the lessons coming out of COVID-19, I think, is people are realizing the average Canadian was saving like 3% of their income. And a good percentage, the bottom quarter of, I guess, people rack up the most debt. Those folks were living way beyond their means. And so this is a wake-up call, like, hey, this is going to happen again. There's going to be probably another recession or something else is going to happen economically. And the learning outcome is here, I need to be saving money from my job. Whatever source of income I have, I need to be saving for the future because it isn't always great forever. Bull markets are great. They last a decade potentially like we've seen, but this comes to an end. And I think that people need to be responsible for their own financial futures to an extent. And then I put in this is the final edit that I put in after people were kind of coming at me. And I clarified like the come on, Dougie stimulus part. And I put this paragraph in here. I think giving Canadians $2,000 a month each to spend however they want as stimulus will lead to a few thousand evictions in 6 months' time, as opposed to potentially paying tenants rent and food and basic necessities directly. Some people won't catch up because of poor spending decisions with this stimulus. This was specifically some people were commenting on the post this time. He's like, just got brand new iPhone, smile, rent won't be paid on the first. I was like, some of these comments were just ridiculous. Like they were actually trying to like, I think they were just trolling me, to be honest, at that point. And so I kind of put this in because there wasn't the 2000 stimulus when I first made the post. I think that came out a couple days after. And so I said some people won't be able to catch up because of that. We know historically from the data, not the drama, but that Canadians aren't good budgeters. They aren't good savers. 3% of income on average in Canada in good economic times is put away for saving. So in bad economic times, we're definitely not saving. And I don't think 3% is enough. We should be teaching budgeting in school. We should be teaching it as a required course. I think it'd be something that would be a solution coming out of COVID-19 or coming out of any recession is teaching the generation that now has to deal with the recovery of this, economic pullback that we now have to make conscious changes in the way that we lived our life before. This is actually a wake-up call for a lot of us. And so I said and then I made a point further. I put this in as a further edit. It's very easy to live on minimum wage. It's been done by many people who work in the Toronto area. I've got lots of followers on my YouTube channel. So I linked to 2 videos, and that was a bad idea because they got on my YouTube channel and then they just started going crazy on there. But I thought it would maybe, if they saw a video, I actually turned 2 people in the comments who were like extreme radical individuals I would label by their initial comments to like come around and be like, okay, I see how that's possible, and that one could like pare back and live well on less than $24,000 a year or minimum wage. And then so that's my goal with this post, is that a few people, I changed their mindset and they saw my side of the coin, and I see their side too, and that's important. We both see both sides of the story. So I linked to a couple of my videos, and people watch those to see how one could actually afford rent during this time, even if they were having to now work at a lower paying job or they had less income coming in. So that was sort of me at the end, just sort of providing a solution, saying, hey, here's some, like I walked through in those videos line by line how someone could create a budget and live on a lot less and still be able to pay their rent in these economic times. So that was sort of the post, and then the comments. So
we'll get into the comment section in a second, but I thought before actually pulling up the comments, I'd love to chat about not the comments specifically, but more about this just immediate jump to share our emotions rather than facts. And I just find that so many people are having emotional reactions to what's going on rather than trying to think through the process, rationally and logically. I think it's actually quite important that we do so, especially during these trying times, because it's very easy to have our emotions yo-yo or swing like a pendulum from extreme to extreme, especially with such a fast news cycle. And there's so much information and misinformation and misunderstandings and assumptions being made right now. And again, just this immediate anger, this immediate conflict, this immediate desire to, have a standoff between the perceived haves and the perceived have-nots, to immediately want to play the victim card or the, poor me mentality. And, this probably won't go over popular with the people that have that natural reaction, but it's important to understand the more we can view our life through the lens of us being under control, the likelier it is that we're going to have a life we enjoy. If you can have a strong internal locus of control, if you can believe that most things are within your power to change, you're going to be at such a better position than the person that simply can only complain about what's happening. If you don't believe that you can step up or lean in or double down in order to get the results you want, then you're a victim of life. Life only happens to you rather than you happening to life. I think it's really important that we understand that if we want to live in a better world, if we want to live a better life, we need to take it upon ourselves to take those first few steps. Totally. All right. Should we dive into the comment section now? And I know that you actually removed some of the most extreme comments and some of the most hate-filled comments. And again, I think it's really unfortunate that you can lay out a very logical, unemotional post and have such extreme hatred and vitriol thrown at you. And I've definitely experienced this myself as well when I've covered subject matters like rent control and things of that nature, which again, often have a very emotional reaction. But when we look at the data, there's some pretty sound fundamental reasons that we make the arguments we do. It's not that we're just greedy, evil landlords. It's we literally do believe that this is the best solutions available based upon all the information, based upon the studies, based upon the past experience that we as individuals and as a society have experienced up until this point in time.
Totally. So, yeah, I had to make the post private actually. So you won't be able to find this post anywhere. It's been made completely private on my page only because I was getting so many comments. And this isn't like a few days window. If I left it going, I'm sure there'd be way more comments. And I removed hundreds of comments from here that were just like this kind of stuff. Yeah. Right.
Like, and again, I get it. It's like relatively a cartoon or meme that you're posting. But if you actually take a step further down this road into what this is actually implying, this is implying extreme violence against landlords. And again, I think people naturally build up this avatar or project certain principles or views onto landlords. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, if you know differently, but I think 50% of the rental properties available in Canada are provided by small landlords. Those are provided by private landlords. And when we break that down, like that's your neighbor. That's the person that runs the convenience store. That's the accountant that does your taxes. It's the the repairman or the garbage man. Like it's actually a lot of normal individuals that are trying to get control of their personal financial lives. They're investing in their financial futures and trying to get control. And it's not these greedy fat cats on Wall Street that are manipulating the rules to make sure that they win. Landlords, at least based upon the vast majority of landlords I know, they're not asking for bailouts. They're just asking for cooperation during these trying times. They're not like, this isn't like 2007 or 2009 again, where the big bankers are going to get huge bailouts and give themselves giant bonuses. There's no landlords getting bailed out and giving themselves giant bonuses in this current economic climate. This is literally just, small business owners, that's what a landlord is, trying to survive these uncertain times. So let's just kind of keep scrolling here through the comment section and see what else we can kind of stumble upon. But again, I understand people's intentions, but they need to understand. Like, look, this one, another guillotine, right? Like,
I haven't even seen some of these comments actually. Like this thread here, I don't think I even saw this one.
Oh yeah. Well, there's so many, like over 1,000, right?
You see who that is, eh? They kept posting.
Oh yeah, okay.
They murdered all the landlords.
Same user at first. Yeah, this is crazy. Like, what does this mean? Oh yeah, homie, stealing from grocery stores is tight, and if landlords want money, they should get jobs. Like, it's literally just people making noise. The amount of entitled communists on here. And like, again, this won't be popular for those that have a socialist bent, but like, if you push too hard, in my opinion, Atlas does shrug. John Galt does give up. And again, the more you push this us versus them perspective, this tenants versus landlords, you're just setting up more conflict. What we really need to be understanding is most good landlords view their tenants as customers. Every business wants to work with their customers. No business wants to be standoffish in regards to their customers.
It'd be great if we could, choose to fire our customers who are, treating us unfairly, but that's not the case here in Ontario. We don't have the right. If a customer is very poor, we have to keep servicing them. It's the only business that you have to do that.
And I don't even understand what all these boot comments really are about, to be honest. But again, like, to me, think about all the energy these people are putting in regards to just hating on this social media post, rather than, if you're actually in a tough financial spot, why not take the onus and take the control of the situation and start focusing on bettering yourself? If you find yourself, under quarantine, there's so much great information out there on the internet, on YouTube now, that you can start leveling up your mindset, leveling up your financial knowledge. What's this here? Hi, I own a house, but my tenants can't afford the rent because of the crisis. What should I do? Congratulations, you own what called investment property. We're very sorry to hear your tenants are in trouble. Have you considered lowering or even eliminating rents for your tenants during this time? What's this about?
It's like a Q&A that they made themselves.
Oh, okay.
Screenshotted, basically, it's something that they made themselves. I'm pretty sure one of the tenant groups that just basically says like, hey, you should just give free rent to the tenants.
Gotcha.
Like, you should go get a job to pay for your investment property and subsidize these people's living. It's
And
pretty
so-
radical.
I see we've got Luke Borean trying to go in there and fight the good fight on behalf of landlords. Bean Man, And just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I understand that people are going through hard times and that they're frustrated. But again, this stuff isn't, like, this doesn't move the needle, guys. Putting out this hate, just being angry at the world and posting memes doesn't solve the problem. What solves the problem is taking control of your financial life, getting control, leaning into the situation, and taking ownership. Posting
comments is crazy. Like, interest is theft. That one posted like, interest is theft. Like, what?
Yeah.
Profit is theft. Profit, like these people actually believe that profit and interest are theft.
And the
Like,
real problem is, you take this to its logical extreme conclusion. What you're saying is that people don't have the rights over their own labor. And if people don't have the rights to benefit from the proceeds of their labor, you're in essence saying that people don't have control over their body. what you're implying at this point in time is that the state or society should have control over an individual's body, because otherwise, if rent is theft, if profit is theft, if interest is theft, you're saying that people shouldn't be able to take control and invest their time, energy, and potential money, although I'm sure this guy thinks money's theft as well, into any sort of productive means. If people can no longer be productive, if they can no longer create a spread between their inputs and outputs, everything falls apart. Jordan won't even be able to make stupid memes anymore if all of a sudden this was to be implemented.
It's funny because he said, it goes further. It says if you're making money that didn't come from your own labor, then it's coming from someone else's labor and you're stealing their money. Like, it just goes to show how little he understands like economic theory at all, or, like, the economy at all. And they haven't even thought through anything really. Like, it's just,
that's like honestly embarrassing, in my opinion, to have such a misunderstanding of how things work. And being a landlord makes your opinion invalid.
It's like
Luke was starting to get a little salty here. I like it.
I like that one. Being used to productive bleach on society makes your opinion not valid.
And it's just like, I just don't understand, because at the same time, these people act as if it's in a vacuum, right? As if we don't have employees, as if we don't pay contractors, as if we don't pay cleaners. There's a lot of spin-off business and value or GDP generated because of this investment. Again, all we need to do is take it to the logical conclusion of what's the solution they're proposing. Well, if individuals can't own land, then the state owns all the land. If the state now owns all the property, they're the ones that get to decide where you get to live, when you get to move, how you get to live. And again, the moment you run afoul of the state, you now literally will have nowhere to live in this country. Like, this is ridiculous, man. All right. Well, before I have to get blood pressure medication, we should probably just wrap this up and move on.
There were actually some good comments in there too, where like a good debate threads happened. They keep posting this like Moy guy or Mao, Chinese dictator who killed all the landlords in town and then took all their land.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like one of the greatest, evilest men of all time, responsible for perhaps I don't know, like him and Stalin racing for who killed the most amount of innocent people during the 20th century?
Like, I can't believe this was actually covered by hundreds and hundreds of people, that they actually believe this. The scariest part was that I creeped some of the profiles before I blocked them. One of them was like an Ontario high school teacher.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy's allowed to teach our kids and he's posting this stuff. Like, I almost wanted to report it, but I didn't want to like mess up his life. But like, just crazy to me that,
man, I don't know. Like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, could you imagine, take this, like, again, most communists don't realize how close they are to fascism, but you flip the switch and instead all of a sudden they're posting Hitler and like Hitler youth saluting to this post and saying that you should be killed and your land should be seized and the state should own it. Like, think about all of the hate these communists or these socialists would naturally have towards that, but it's the same thing. It's literally the same economic system. Like, oh my God, study history, people. Like, we are doomed to repeat history if we don't learn from it. And that's my greatest fear here, when people aren't willing to speak up. Because I think there's a lot of intelligent, smart people that don't want to bear the banner the way you're doing it, or the way Kayla from Ontario Landlords Watch is doing it, or even the way Luke jumping in the comment section is trying to fix stupid. Again, it's very difficult to fix stupid, but if we don't even try, then we've already admitted defeat. And this is just going to continue to perpetuate.
You don't know the number, Matt, of private DMs I was getting from people saying like, hey, Mike, you're fighting the good fight for all this. Appreciate it. I don't want to risk my business being robbed and stolen. I would jump in the comments to defend you, but like literally these people are crazy. And I'm just going to be like silently watching. Dozens of those people who are following, who I know are like well-respected members of this community, right? And they're afraid to stick their neck out and risk their reputation just to defend what is actually probably right? The idea that like private citizens shouldn't be stolen from, that like all of the current values that we hold and the current laws are, pretty much just that, well, some of them anyway, around like theft and around, the current way we've developed our current economic system. I'm not saying it's perfect. I know people are obviously not happy, especially if you're at the bottom of the economic, ladder, so to speak. You wouldn't be happy. And like, rightfully so, there should be a change, right? Something that can help you to rise. But I think the way that you actually elevate yourself, and the important piece here for those people watching is the way you elevate yourself is through like acquiring knowledge, through trying to better yourself, as opposed to like putting out evil, hateful memes and like trying to attack someone else. The easiest way for you to climb the economic ladder is not to take from someone else. It's actually to better yourself and figure out how to climb the ladder. And
yeah, it's to create value for society, right? Like that's the great thing about like capitalism, about the free market when it's implemented right, is literally the market gets to decide who wins and loses. We get to vote with our dollars. If someone's not providing a service, if they're not providing value, just don't be a customer of theirs. If they spout policies or political views you don't like, just don't be a customer of theirs. Hit them where it counts in the wallet, rather than this natural overreaction of just wanting to enforce your vision on someone else. Like every single person that's saying that, tenants shouldn't pay for rent, they're literally advocating violence. Like they're literally advocating that someone should be able to just physically take possession of your assets. Like it blows my mind that we can live in a society where information is so freely available, and yet we would all choose to just ignore that information. That we'd rather be blind to the situation and comfort ourselves with niceties about how it's evil people that are doing evil, rather than just taking ownership of the situation. And again, I just really want to thank you, Mike, for being one of the standard bearers currently and fighting this good fight, because it's important that we all understand we're now the adults. Like, I think a lot of us naturally want to look around the room and we think politicians or high school teachers or whoever is going to stand up and make things right. No, we are the adults. Understand, like, at no point in time are you going to feel like, okay, now I'm mature enough, now I'm ready to actually like carry that cross. No, you just need to start doing it today. And we all need to take responsibility for it. If we want to live in a better society, we need to take ownership of the situation. So again, I really appreciate you doing that, Mike. And for anyone else that wants to follow along with you on your journey, Mike, where's the best way, or what's the best place to follow along?
Instagram at Mike Rosehart, or YouTube, Facebook.
Awesome. Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks.
Thanks again to Mike for taking the time to shoot this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. If you guys want more videos with Mike Rosehart, we've got a ton of different content with Mike, so make sure you check out all our different playlists with Mike Rosehart. I'll see you guys in the next video.